NIL. It's a phrase all sports fans have heard for the past few years, but some people still might not fully understand it. Now that's fair given how much it's changed in only a few short years. But when exactly did it begin, and what does NIL stand for? On June 21st, 2021, the Alston v. NCAA court case ruled that athletes have the right to make money off their name, image, and likeness. Thus, the acronym NIL was created. Now let me give you examples of each aspect. Using a player's name would be like jersey sales. A player's image is like a player doing sponsorships for brands and companies. A player's likeness is like using them in College Football 25 or any other video game. Now it looks like schools are directly paying athletes to play. This isn't legal yet, but another court case could change that soon. The House v. NCAA case had a hearing on April 7th. No official ruling was granted, so sports fans are waiting for the next hearing. The case itself is trying to legalize the direct payment of college athletes. If passed, each school would be given a $20.5 million salary cap to pay their athletes. Additionally, $2.8 billion would be paid to former college athletes as far back as 2016 for both missed NIL opportunities and schools making money off their broadcasts. Title IX throws a fork in the road with this since the NCAA is unsure if it would apply to the settlement. Now let me give you my stance. While NIL has shown some positive lights, a lot more of it has been negative. Throughout this episode, I'll be talking about multiple effects NIL has had on college athletics, including mental health, payment discrepancies, and a few case studies of individual athletes and schools. All of these have taken away from the amateur aspect of the NCAA that fans have loved for decades. I'm Michael Allen. Let's dive into this. First, let's look at mental health. Because mental health has become more and more important to the lives of everyone, I felt it was essential to look at the effects NIL has had on the mental health of athletes. In a study conducted by Ethan Madden and Brendan O'Halloran, athletes of a variety of schools, sports, genders, and age gave insight as to how they saw the effects of NIL firsthand. Firstly, they found there was some sort of stigma associated with NIL between different sports. Sports that generated more money and had more NIL deals were more open to talk about how much they made compared to other sports. What comes with this, however, is athletes valuing themselves based on their net worth rather than their on-field talents. Another reported that some of the transfers they see are impulsive. It could be kids chasing money that may not be there in the end for them. These transferring athletes are sometimes painted negatively by coaches, who may claim that their desire for money overweighed their loyalty to a program. When transfers catch wind of this, they may feel hurt and cut off certain people from their old university. Additionally, there isn't much education on NIL, mainly because of its recency. Syracuse football head coach Fran Brown, however, is working to change that by holding weekly meetings on financial literacy with his team. However, this practice isn't universal. A lot of athletes still don't know enough and are worried about being taken advantage of in the NIL market and not getting the full value of a deal. Next, I want to talk about some discrepancies between male and female athletes, along with the top 10% of athletes versus the majority. I did a survey, and 90% of respondents felt that there is a discrepancy between the payment of male and female athletes. While it is pretty well split at the top, most male athletes do in fact make more than female athletes. For guys, NIL deals almost come naturally. They don't need a whole lot of self-marketing to get themselves out there and make money. Girls, on the other hand, have to heavily market themselves just to get a chance at a deal. They also have to present themselves in traditional female styles to make the most profit. In addition, some female athletes may have actually hurt their sport by being too popular. Author Daniel Salofsky brought up an idea called the Caitlin Clark phenomenon. Naturally, it's named after former Iowa women's basketball superstar Caitlin Clark. She brought a ton of attention to the game, but it may have not been as good as people think it was. The attention Clark brought to NCAA women's basketball and now the WNBA is monumental, but more of the attention was for her individually rather than the sport itself. For example, ESPN the magazine wrote a full issue on solely Caitlin Clark instead of women's basketball as a whole. Another big-time discrepancy is more general, being between the top 10% of athletes versus the majority. For this, I'm going to focus on football since that's what I'm most familiar with. Guys like Quinn Ewers from Texas and Carson Beck from Georgia, who recently transferred to Miami, had deals of about $1.5 million last season. It seems a bit high, but reasonable for top-end starting quarterbacks. Arch Manning, who was Quinn Ewers' backup in Texas, made over $3 million in NIL, about double what those two made. I know he's a decent quarterback, but I feel a lot of these deals came because of his last name rather than his on-field play. These athletes are in what I consider the top 10% of earners. The majority of college athletes don't make that much. It feels weird to say only in this scenario, but most only make a couple of $1,000s that they feel they deserve. Now, these guys aren't top-end talent, and there's a reason the top 10 make what they do, but the majority of athletes aren't significantly worse than those three I mentioned earlier, where the majority should make so much less than them. Now I have my specific examples from schools and athletes of the negative effects of NIL. First, I want to look at a small Catholic Division I university from middle-of-nowheresville, PA, St. Francis University. When I say middle-of-nowheresville, I mean it. SFU is nestled in the mountains of Loretto, Pennsylvania. They recently had one of their best athletic seasons in school history. Their football team, which is an FCS program, beat their first FBS program in school history. Their men's basketball team made the NCAA tournament for the first time in over 30 years and only the second time in school history. Despite this success, the shocking news came that the school would be reclassified to Division III for the 2026-2027 athletic and academic year. Why would they do this? The school cited that the changing landscape of college athletics, including the transfer portal, the upcoming House v. NCAA settlement, and NIL, is taking away from the students' love of the game. Since the House v. NCAA settlement would allow schools to pay athletes $20.5 million, moving down is a good business move for a school that doesn't make enough revenue to pay the athletes. However, many student athletes are mainly there because of their athletic scholarships. When the move to Division III happens, the students will either be able to keep their scholarships or keep playing their sports, which is causing many athletes to enter the transfer portal. Overall, this isn't great for SFU's enrollment. Next, we have another issue at the university level: collectives. Collectives are groups of wealthy donors that will pool money to purchase an athlete's likeness for charity events. At least that's what they say on the surface level. As Natalie Kitroff from the New York Times reported, some of them have become a quote-unquote black market to recruit athletes to schools. A prime example of this is from the University of Texas. In 2021, when NIL was first legalized, Texas was paying offensive linemen $50,000 just for playing at the school. The only charity event I see these guys attending is Quarterback Protection Service on college football game days. Finally, we have three examples of individual athletes: 2 quarterbacks and 1 celebrity kicker. The first comes from this previous football season, where UNLV quarterback Matthew Sluka seemingly quit on his team because of an unfulfilled NIL promise from the school. According to Mumphrey, Merritt, and Brandt from the Associated Press, he was verbally promised a $100,000 NIL deal just for transferring to UNLV. This verbal promise was never fulfilled, so he decided to redshirt and take his talents to James Madison University. The other happened more recently with Tennessee quarterback Nico Iamaleava. According to Pete Thamel from ESPN, Nico, who wasn't a superstar quarterback, wanted to increase his contract to $4 million. Tennessee wouldn't pay it, so he plans on transferring. Because of NIL, player loyalty has taken a significant fall, and these quarterbacks are 2 prime examples. The celebrity kicker I mentioned earlier is former UCF kicker Donald De La Haye, aka Destroying. Destroying started a YouTube channel during his freshman year in 2015, long before athletes were able to profit off their name, image, and likeness. The next year, both the NCAA and his coaches felt that he made too much money off his social media following, and he was forced to choose between his 2 passions, football and content creation. He decided on the latter, hanging up the cleats and focusing full-time on content creation. Last year, he got the chance to chase his dream, becoming a kicker for the San Antonio Brahmas of the UFL. If he keeps performing at a high level, he may get the chance to play in the NFL. These examples show a side of college athletics that has become very individualistic and borderline corrupt. NIL is not always negative, however. One positive case of NIL comes with former USC running back and Heisman winner Reggie Bush. He won the Heisman Trophy in 2005 and was the 2nd overall pick in the 2006 NFL Draft. In 2010, it was found that he and his family received unfair benefits from USC. Because of this, he was forced to relinquish his Heisman Trophy. In the past few years, many people had shown support for him as NIL became more and more mainstream, including former Heisman winner Johnny Manziel, who said that he would remove himself from the Heisman Trophy ceremony until Bush received what was rightfully his. Almost 1 year ago now, Reggie Bush was able to reclaim his trophy as the NCAA and Heisman Trust ruled that player compensation has become widely accepted. As I mentioned earlier, not all athletes make millions. The majority make only a small amount they feel they deserve. They see it as an opportunity to give back to their families, especially those from poorer backgrounds. It also seems that a degree is still the ultimate goal for many college athletes, which sounds pretty good to defeat that dumb jock stereotype. One heartwarming example of this was Tavarius Covington from Chicago. He had previously taken a break from football in high school, but came back to play in the 2024-2025 school year. He hopes to set a good example for his younger brother who also plays football and become a first-generation college student. He wants his brother to know that there is more to life after high school. It's good to see that some athletes still prioritize their family and education instead of chasing a bag. Hopefully, if you've been following along, you see there's a big problem with NIL. I don't think it needs to be done away with completely, but there is a lot of room for improvement. To start, players need to be educated. From a survey I did, 90% of respondents felt that there is a lack of education about NIL. Part of this is because of its recency, but I feel it's been long enough now that there can be something. Athletic departments need to teach their athletes how to navigate the world of NIL and how to be responsible with their money, something Coach Fran Brown at Syracuse is doing a great job of. Additionally, there has been no federal regulation of NIL since its inception in 2021. This has to change. States can set their own rules, giving their schools an advantage over which athletes they can get because of looser NIL regulations. Some federal legislation, such as an NIL cap, would help in making a more balanced playing field for all schools. This would also help to fight complacency in the NCAA, as one athlete in a study by Madden O'Halloran said. He believed that athletes are not pushing themselves as much to reach the next level since they are making enough money in college. Now comes one of the touchier topics, Title IX. For those who don't know, Title IX prohibits sex-based discrimination in places of education that receive federal funding. The big question is whether it should apply to NIL and/or pay-for-play. Because NIL is very individualistic and a lot of it relies on the athlete's self-marketing, I do not think it should apply to that. In fact, according to Paula Levine from ESPN, the Department of Education ruled that Title IX would not apply to NIL. For pay-for-play, which is what the House v. NCAA settlement is discussing, it gets a bit more gray. Obviously, every athlete is entitled to make money for playing their sport, and I believe they all should make money, but I don't think it should be a 50-50 split. For example, we can look at the viewership of men's and women's NCAA basketball tournaments from last year. While the men's tournament drew in an average of 9.9 million viewers, the women's tournament only drew in 2.2 million. Thus, the NCAA makes significantly more from the broadcasts of men's tournament games than women's. Therefore, different sports should be paid in proportion to how much revenue they generate. Take this information however you wish, but next time you choose to support or diss NIL, use this information as the basis for your stance. Thank you for listening.